Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Democrats are saying you can't deport them, you can't detain them, you can't prosecute them. The only thing you can do, per a Democrat, is to release them into the interior without any ramification for what they've done by breaking our laws. It's absolutely incredible. There are only one of two things that can happen when they come here. You have to either release them into the interior of the United States as a family unit, or you have to separate the families. That's what the law says. This is up to the Democrats. They could fix this right now. If you close those loopholes, we could do this humanely, and quite frankly, the Democrats' policies put drug cartels in business. They're raking in money hand over fist, sending people to this country carrying drugs, and also the child smuggling industry. International child smuggling is up because Democrats create incentives by not closing these loopholes. You have to stop this because we have to protect this country, and we have to do this humanely.
Okay, so this is a real, that's Hogan Gidleaf, representing the White House, this position, which is, fetal. I gotta tell you that these are not. First of all, this is a great example of garbage in, garbage out. He begins with the statement that people have broken the law. Okay, people who are coming here seeking asylum have not broken any law, number one. So that's garbage in. They broke the law. They didn't break the law. They came here asking for asylum. They are being put through a credible fear process. It takes 2 or 3 weeks to set up the process. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to check out their story, to find out whether or not they live in credible fear or something will happen to them. They will either be murdered, they will be raped, their children will be indoctrinated into a gang or jumped into a gang or shot or killed or whatever. That's the credible fear test, right? And so that takes time. It takes somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks to set up the process and then 4 to 6 weeks to get a determination. So here we are talking about months and months and months, okay? At least 3-4 months. And what you're doing is you're separating asylum seekers from their children and handing those children to a separate U.S. agency, Health and Human Services, and holding the parents in the Department of Homeland Security system, and they lose track of each other. Okay, that's number one. And they've committed no crime. Number two, if they're border jumpers, which these people are not, but if they were border jumpers, that is a misdemeanor. How many of you have been separated from your children because you jaywalked or got a traffic ticket? Answer, none of you. And they keep on giving you these false choices. Well, they committed a crime, so we have to put them in jail, and kids can't go to jail. They haven't committed a crime. They're seeking asylum, and you could keep the whole family together. And if they are border jumpers, you could take the border jumpers and the children that they came with, turn them right around at the border, not ever let them go into the interior. See, they just set up these false arguments, these fake things. And, Brett said something to me as we were going to the break. I went outside for a minute and he said to me, something, Randi, how could he be blaming the Democrats? He keeps saying the Democrats are weak on borders. But if it's the Democrats that are saying, hey, separate mothers and children as a deterrent, that's hardly weak. That's like strongman fascism. So which is it with him? That's how you know it's all a lie. The heartlessness of this is mind-boggling. This is not about crime. This is not about security. This is about feeding into a very cruel population, a very hate-filled population that we happen to have in the United States, who want to see children being needlessly ripped from their mothers, even while the mother is breastfeeding the child. Now, too bad for you. This goes against fundamental American values. It also deteriorates our standing in the world as the shining city on the hill and a beacon for freedom. So what can you do? Well, there are several things you can do. You can call Congress because they're supposed to be voting this week. You can join the protests, okay? There were protests all across this country this Father's Day. You can donate to legal and humanitarian efforts. You can, support what's called the Fair Day in Court for Kids Act, which requires the government appoint counsel to actual unaccompanied minors. And for the ones that are accompanied, not split them up from their parents to create a separate group of unaccompanied minors that are now unaccompanied by virtue of Donald Trump's decree that they be separated, right? And of course, we only have like 5 more months before the vote, okay? We vote in 2018. Please do this. Please do this. This was too inhumane for even Bush to do, okay? This was we've never seen this before. This is new. This is vile. This is, real slave-style stuff. This is a throwback to the 1600s, okay? This is as far back as you could possibly go to find inhumanity and cruelty. This is like the Middle Ages stuff. I mean, this is like real freaky, okay? And while they sit there and lie, I want you to know you can't have it both ways. If this was the Democrats' plan to separate women and children, then don't call us weak on the border. We're absolute fascists, okay? But it isn't. And Trump keeps saying, Democrats, it's all Democrats. They're very weak on the border. How could you have it both ways? You can't. This is something they made up out of whole cloth. And the only answer is to address the problems in the countries they are fleeing. And because these are our near neighbors, you cannot ignore it if you're concerned about immigration. Ambrose, you're a truck driver somewhere in America.
Yes, Randy, thank you so much for what you do every day. I'm a regular listener. I'm calling when I get the opportunity to. But I was telling your screener just now that I am, again, traumatized by hearing all these issues with these kids. Because I was separated as a child from my mother when I was only 10 months old. My mother left me in Barbados. I went to England, and it was traumatizing. And how I finally found out was years after I was an adult. I was having issues, and I went to see a psychiatrist, and I told her my story. And she said, yes, you was traumatized as a child, and you haven't, and you're not going to get over it,
Yeah, it's abandonment, lack of trust for, adults, lack of trust in the universe, lack of trust in the world, toxic stress in your brain. It's physiological, Ambrose. It is. It's the natural result of what happened to you.
Exactly. And hearing what these kids are going through, driving the truck all day and listening to these shows and hearing it just re-traumatizing me all over again. So I just wanted to share that with all these people that say that people breaking the laws and this should happen. They don't know what they're doing to all these kids.
Well, thank you
These kids going to grow up to be adults, and it will come back to haunt this country. Thank you again, and continue your good work.
Thank you, Ambrose. Thank you for sharing that. That's hard to share. That's seriously, hard to share. But at least he's working on himself. But why should somebody have to work on themselves from the time they were 10 months old? Okay? That's just too much to ask, although he rose to the occasion. Good for you. Pat in Alabama.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good.
Bad day.
Yeah.
For America.
Terrible, embarrassing, horrendous,
yes,
cruel,
it's
horrific,
shameful.
ugly.
It's immoral. It's illegal.
Yeah.
I was telling Scotty that when I was about 6, we lived in Panama during the Panamanian Revolution, and I can back up everything you're saying about the government putting in these dictators and then the people
we
revolting
love
against
freaking
them.
dictators. Look what we did it all over. We did it all over Central America. We did it. We also did it in Chile. Okay. In Chile, we sent Milton Friedman and those, Chicago boys to use Chile as a great experiment in privatizing Social Security and put a dictator in, Pinochet, to make sure that, the strong man would allow for this experimentation on his population to take place. And, of course, what they did when they privatized Chile's Social Security is they took a nice middle-class thriving nation and they turned it into into some backwoods, back-ass, poverty-stricken, income inequality riddled, country. And Chile's still trying to recover from this crazy crap that we did.
I know. We've always done this so that we can keep all these countries as third world countries and maintain our power. And my dad got out of the special forces and went into the Pentagon to try to convince them that this was the wrong approach and that we needed to stabilize these countries. So I've grown up with this all my life. I was a military brat, and then I grew up and became a social worker and worked with abused and neglected kids. And I can tell you that the treatment they're doling out to these kids, we would remove somebody that if their parent were not taking care of them or touching them or comforting them, they would be removed.
You
from
remember,
the home.
You just reminded me of something. I only did, Psychology 101, okay? I never went really further than that. But one of the first things that they show you in psychology is, the child, okay? And how.
That's right.
Right. And one of the first things, do you remember a psychologist named Erickson? And he had a wire. They did this with monkeys.
Yep.
Okay, they had 2 cages of monkeys. And one cage had a cloth-covered mother, was really a wire monkey, but it was covered in soft cloth. And the other cage was a wire mother that was not covered in soft cloth. And the monkeys that were given the soft cloth mother were sort of normal. And the monkeys that were given the wire mother literally went batshit crazy. And
they will.
Yeah.
They do. They grow up with all kinds of emotional disturbances. It's just wacky.
Yeah.
And I mean, we would have moved in and immediately with, taking the kid out of that situation because so many of them that grew up and became emotionally disturbed teenagers, which was what I dealt with eventually. It was a direct result of the way they were treated as children.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to realize the bottom line for Trump, it's always about the bottom line with this idiot, is he wants that wall.
Yes.
And that's why he's blaming Democrats. He wants to put the pressure on the Democrats until they cave.
But, I got to tell you, Pat, they did cave. There was an immigration bill back, I guess, in December of last year.
Oh, yeah, and they gave him partial funding for it.
Not only did they give him there was another bill that had a restoration of DACA, and in exchange, they would fund his freaking wall. I think they put, Charles Schumer said there was $25 billion, and the Republicans wouldn't vote for it, and it failed, okay? They only got 36 Republican. Listen, the Republicans are not going to spend this kind of money on a stupid, stinking wall.
No, but they're going to blame it on the Democrats.
Well, that's what they do.
And I, frankly, have been shocked that the Democrats have not been jumping up and down and screaming about this issue ever since it started back in May.
Well, they have been. It's just that people don't realize it. I mean,
I know, but we got to get down in the gutter and play dirty like the Republicans.
I agree with you. I think it's time to play very dirty. I do. I think it's time to.
That's all the media understands.
It's true. It's true. Somebody's got,
to draw attention.
Yeah.
They're going to have to keep stomping their feet and screaming and yelling louder than Trump does.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, the way that he spoke and the way he said, I'm going to tax you motherfuckers and I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. Some Democrats got to come along and say, I'm going to kick the shit out of you if you separate one more bit. You know what I mean? They're just going to have to start talking like that.
Yeah, we can't do any more of this. I mean, I see the value in going high when they go low. And
I do too.
But they don't ever go high.
Never. And this issue literally enrages people, and so that's permissible,
It's outraged me.
Yeah.
This has been the one circumstance, well, all of them have, but this one more so than anything because it affects everything. It affects the children. It affects the parents. It affects our standing in the world.
It also affects our future.
It affects, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And any kind of influence that we can have on top of this stupid tariff thing that he's pulled.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, he's just messing.
See, this is a beautiful thing, though. The
farmers,
the pig farmers in Iowa and the soybean farmers everywhere, they're freaked out, okay? They are completely and totally freaked out.
That's the only thing I've agreed with Joni Ernst about.
Right, Joni.
The swampy guy.
Yeah.
But that's the bottom line for Trump.
Yeah.
And he's not going to give up on this until the Democrats cave into the wall.
No.
And that's what we've got to call and tell them.
Well, they gave him his wall money, but they couldn't get enough Republican votes. It's not us. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.